Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Wednesday, December 12th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I'm joined this lovely Tuesday afternoon as we're recording live by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Ruhnke. JT, how are you on a Victory Tuesday? A Victory Tuesday that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming.
I mean, we might as well just erase our Thursday episode off the face of the earth because that is direct evidence that we had no idea that this was going to happen. Yet here we are on one of the weirdest days of the year. You never really usually see a Victory Tuesday, but that's where we are. And it's been an interesting day so far, but now we're here and let's talk some Titans.
You're right. Victory Tuesdays are rare, and they certainly weren't. It was not an expected one here with the Titans shocking the Dolphins 28-27, winning, making history, doing some really fantastic things, doing a couple of really bad things we're going to talk about. I am so amped, JT. I texted you around midday today and told you, get ready for this show. Bring the juice, because I'm bringing the juice. I have not been this excited for a show in a long time. We are chocked full of Titans recap and stats and analysis and information for you from what was a phenomenally entertaining Monday night of football. Before we dive into all of that today, and we're not going to dilly-dally, waste any time, we're going to get right into it. But first, a couple of housekeeping things we got to take care of. First of all, if you're tuning in with us live, thank you so much for being here on a Tuesday afternoon. Appreciate you and your viewership. Help us out. Hit that like button, hit that retweet button, hit that thumbs up button if you're watching on YouTube. Whatever you can do, wherever you're watching, to help us not just spread this show, but get as many eyeballs on it as humanly possible live. That is incredibly helpful to us. We want as many live folks in here as possible to be a part of the conversation. And the way to directly be a part of that conversation is to stop watching on YouTube or on Twitter, if that's where you're at. Head on over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Did I say stop watching on YouTube? Ignore that. Stop watching on Twitter or Facebook, and go over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. That's where you're going to find this live stream. That's Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Find this live stream, and in the comment section of that video is where you can become a part of today's conversation, like AJ and Logan already have. AJ says, hello, Easton and JT. To you, AJ, we say hello and welcome in. If you guys wouldn't mind, while you're there, hitting that subscribe button. We're trying to get our subscription count on YouTube up to 1,000 by the end of the year. A daunting number, but I know we can do it because I know how many of you watch. And there are thousands of you. And so if just a fraction of you hit that button, it will be very helpful to us. It's free to you and it's very helpful to us. So please just do it as a favor. And we appreciate you doing that. We are brought to you today, JT, as we always are, by BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse, a fantastic dining establishment here in Middle Tennessee. There are 3 locations in East Nashville, in Murfreesboro, and in Spring Hill, where JT and I call home base. Our Thursday show each and every week is live from the Spring Hill location of BoomBozz, just about 20-25 minutes down I-65 if you live in the Nashville area. We do our shows previewing the Titans Sunday action at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time each and every Thursday before Thursday Night Football. And then we hang out at the bar, get a delicious bite to eat, have some delicious drink on tap, of which they have many local and domestic options. And we watch some great Thursday Night Football on one of the many giant TVs they have there in-house. It is a fantastic sports viewing setup. We recommend you come and hang out with us. If you come, we do Thursday night gift card giveaways each and every week. You can come say hello, just acknowledge that you know who we are, and we will give you free food and drink on us on BoomBozz Craft Pizza. That is a deal that should sell itself. Come hang out each and every Thursday the rest of this NFL season. We'd love to come have you come out and hang with us. All right, JT. All of the housekeeping out of the way. We've got some folks in here. And again, as people are pouring in, if you could help us spread today's show, it's going to be a good one. Hit that like button, hit retweet, send it to a buddy, and hit subscribe where you're over at Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. We appreciate you doing that. We'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and questions, as always, in the comment section of today's YouTube video. Plenty to discuss on this one, JT. Titans shocked the Dolphins 28-27 in the biggest upset of the year. 14-point underdogs on the road where they've looked downright terrible all year long. 2 turnovers in the final 6 minutes, 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion in the final 3 minutes. Rookie quarterback Will Levis looks fantastic in prime time. The most Tennessee Titans game in a long time, in my opinion. That's what I think sums it up so so Titans. And I think Ben Solak, our buddy on Twitter, said it best: dread it, run from it. Spoiler, Mike Vrabel arrives all the same. By the way, on Vrabel, before we dive in, there's a million ways we can talk about this today, and we're going to try to cover all of them. So bear with me if today's dialogue and at times monologue feels a little bit disjointed, but I have a lot of thoughts, and I think you'll find all of them fascinating or interesting. And again, JT, I need your help policing today's show as folks have thoughts, or as you have thoughts on what we have to talk about today in the comment section or from your brain. Stop me, interject. I want this to be a dialogue and not just a monologue, but I have a lot to get through. So do me a favor and jump in when you need to jump in. On Vrabel, who I have caught a whole lot of crap in recent weeks for defending and objectively believing in, despite ups and downs in the past calendar year. Yeah, man, like that team you saw last night sure looks like one that has given up on their coach. Don't you think? Like, clearly his message is no longer getting through to them. You can tell they're not playing for their guy anymore. I mean, that's what I saw last night. Is that what you saw last night?
Exactly. Yeah, they had given up right when the whistle blows. The team just gives up, and they somehow stumble their way into a win.
A win against the AFC 1 seed. And this is a team we're talking about who at this point is functionally out of the playoff race. And yet they go on the road again where they've looked terrible. Every reason in the world to lose that football game. And as we thought they would, lose pretty bad. I mean, you bet them in the best bet gauntlet. I backed you in that decision. And you and I, ultimately, we have the luxury of being so good in the best bet gauntlet this year that loss is one that we will take 10 times out of 10 because it makes this show and this week far more interesting for the rest of our discussion on this show. So happy to have lost that bet, all told. But they had no business winning that game. And they had no business playing as hard, as physical, as long into the game, even when the night was darkest before dawn there at the very end. They had no business finishing like that. And yet they played to the final whistle all night long. And they were the more physical team all night long. And they were determined to play for their coach and embody the style of football that their coach preaches and teaches until the final whistle all night long. That's not a team that has been lost by its head coach. That's not a team that needs to consider a different direction in leadership because who they've got just isn't quite getting through to the fellas in the locker room anymore. It was always a silly narrative. And those of you that give me a hard time for not being a real analyst or not being a real reporter or not being objective in my job because I blindly defend, but no, there's nothing blind about it, guys. And that's what I've been trying to tell you. My defense of Mike Vrabel is because I'm old enough to remember more than the last calendar year. I'm old enough to remember Mike Vrabel having been here as a head coach for over half a decade now. And there's a track record there that hasn't looked great in the immediate past, but there's more to it than that. And you got a vintage Mike Vrabel Tennessee Titans performance on Monday night, a team that had no business winning when everybody in the world, even the folks most inclined to think that they could pull out a win, they convinced everybody that they were going to get killed, and they end up winning the game outright. I think that's really all there is to say about Mike Vrabel and his command of this team and the way that they reflect their head coach. But beyond that little soapbox, let's jump off and talk about some of the insanity in this game, because for the second consecutive week, JT, we've had a Titans game that was thoroughly enjoyable to watch. One was a loss, one was a win. Both of them wildly entertaining. Both of them, you saw some things that you don't typically see in football games. In fact, both contained things you pretty much never see in football games. Again, like last week, we talked on the show about how if you're going to have to, like, it's our job to watch and analyze and talk 3 times a week about this team, at least, God, please, can we make it like, can we make the games drunk? Can we make them crazy and ridiculous and wild and stupid and intoxicating and not, Vikings beat the Raiders 3-0. Like that's what we're trying to avoid. And so far we're 2 for 2 in the past 2 weeks. So I'm a big fan of that. Just a couple of things that caught my eye on this one. First of all, it was so hilarious that all day long, JT, what was the narrative? Oh God, Monday night. Did you see who's playing on Monday Night Football tonight? Jeez Louise, man. These two, and there's 2 games, and they're both good. One of them is a touchdown spread, and one of them is 2 touchdown spread.
And it's not like they're staggered like they have in the past. It's like same start time, which I think people had a lot of questions if you're a fan of the Manning cast, how they were going to do that. I've heard that some horror stories from last night that the Manning cast was just a mess trying to do both games at the same time. And I can't blame them because first of all, it's hard to think of some narratives for each side when going into this game, although there are some to be found. However, like just having them start at the same time, it was also just kind of just the cherry on top of ridiculous.
Trying to do their own little like, what if we had 2 games and we did a red zone situation because they forced you to watch the picture-in-picture situation with both games for like. I don't know a soul that wasn't infuriated by that. I'm guessing they won't do that again because it was kind of a disaster. But besides that, it was hilarious that the narrative all day was for some reason we're getting 2 games. Neither of them look good at all. And then it turns out 2 massive underdogs make each game wildly compelling and then both end up winning outright, which I did the calculations, by the way. If there was anybody insane enough to place a 2-team money line parlay on those games last night, you would have turned $10. And I'm making sure I got my math right here, pulling back up my research. You would have turned $10 into nearly $870. If you had just money line parlayed both of those 2 teams last night. The Titans were like plus 650. The Giants were like plus 270, something like that. Yeah, you'd have made a lot of money. But the NFL rocks. Never forget that. These are the kind of nights that you look at and you're like, oh God, this can't. What are we doing here? That in March, you're going to be begging for, please give us football of any kind. I'm begging. I'm dying. I can't wait the next 4 months for real football. Please give us something. This is the kind of thing you need to savor. And this is why ultimately I push back often on folks that are like talking about the draft and end of November. Like, I get it. Your team might suck. You might be done with the year. Savor the football, man. Savor the football. But yeah, the grandkids, they're going to hear about the night that Tommy DeVito and Will Levis both pulled off upsets in the same night. That's a big deal. I guess we can start from the top. It took 0.3 seconds into the game for David Long Jr. to make an impact play, which I'm sitting there thinking, oh God, here we go. Like, this is going to be the narrative. We're going to have to talk about this. He's going to be a massive impact in the game. Kind of disappeared a little bit. I mean, he made some plays throughout the game, but he wasn't a big talking point. You're not hearing his name brought up on Nashville radio much today. That's very good news. But it was funny that he makes that first tackle for loss, and you're like, hello, welcome back, David Long, former Titan, who's been balling out for the Miami Dolphins this year. The Titans plan early, JT, and we were discussing this via text. It appeared to be, let's just murder everybody, which felt a bit on the nose, frankly, but effective. It's an effective strategy. Xavier Howard goes down very early in the first quarter. Then Jalen Waddle's nicked up. Then Tyreek Hill, who we'll talk about more later in the show, MVP Tyreek Hill. There was no better case for his MVP candidacy than that game last night, where when he was not on the field, the Dolphins offense couldn't do anything. Like, they couldn't really function well. And we're going to discuss that, but he gets nicked up and his ankle is still a big question mark going forward. And then Connor Williams, their center, which was the sneakiest of those 4, he goes down relatively early in the game, midway through the game, and he's torn his ACL. He's done for the year. That's a massive deal. He was playing very good ball. So didn't love that. You don't love when football players are constantly getting killed, but it was a nightmare game for the Dolphins' injury luck early on. In the first quarter, here's just some of the insane. Titans ended up winning this game, by the way. I'm going to remind you that because when I tell you the stat, you're going to be like, no, they didn't. No, they did. First quarter, the Titans were averaging 0.8 yards per play. Not great. The Dolphins were averaging a mere 8.1 yards per play. They escaped that first quarter somehow with the score. I think it was 7-0 at the end of the first. That was impressive in its own right. At that point in the game, we had people on Twitter, in my comments, in my DMs, already started rage tweeting to fire Vrabel, burn it down, burn it all down, when they were actually still hanging on with a very good football team on the road, but that's neither here nor there. And then Denico Autry blocked a field goal, which he's very good at. The last time the Titans did that was when he did it also last season. He's got doesn't he have 6 or 7 of those in his career or more? He's done that a lot. I know it was one of the stats that we had for one of our games earlier on in the year, but he's done that a ton in his career, and that was a big deal. Keeping points off the board was a little poetic feeling for the special teams unit to make a play like that right after Craig Ackerman was gone. And then you had Derrick Henry lining up as this was one of the strangest things we saw all night. Derrick Henry lining up as a wideout against Jalen Ramsey, making that leaping catch at the sticks for a first down. All right, 250 pounds, 6'2", big fella getting up. I mean, looking more athletic than I could. That was really, really impressive. It was a strange play, but it worked. So well done, I suppose. Who had this on their bingo cards, JT? The Dolphins in this game. Pretty good offense, I've been told. 3 passing plays of 20-plus yards for a total of 70 yards on the night. The Titans had 7 such explosive plays passing for 199 total yards. And the Dolphins offense, in case you're wondering, well, who are they playing against? Because it wasn't the Titans defense. No, it was. It was the Titans secondary. We're going to discuss that more later when we discuss the defense as a whole and their performance. But I mean, I was joking on Twitter yesterday before the game that I was sitting down playing GM, playing analyst GM or analyst DC rather, trying to figure out how I would hypothetically scheme up a game to eliminate Tyreek Hill from the equation without creating massive holes elsewhere. And I joked that I felt like the scientists in Apollo 13 where they're trying to fix the cabin air filter. And they're like, we need to make this a round air filter fit into a hole designed for this, a square air filter. And all we have is this, which is a table of like duct tape and toothpicks. That's what that felt like. And yet the Titans scientists somehow found a way to devise a game plan to make the defense that at times throughout the game was clearly and obviously inferior in talent and in speed. And you see some angles that are taken and you're like, oh God, that hurts to watch. And yet they managed to be, one of, if not the number one defensive performances against the Dolphins all year long. The Dolphins offense functionally only scored 6 points in this game. Only generated 6 points in this game on their own. We're going to talk about that again in a little bit, but a really fantastic performance for the Titans defense. What else happened here? Some stats on what was a crazy and unexpected ending, right? And you've heard this thrown around a million times today. We're going to say it for the 1,000,001st time because it bears repeating. Teams down 14 or more points with 3 minutes left to play in the game have lost until last night 767 games in a row. 767. That's a lot of games in a row. Even further on than that, the Titans are the first NFL team ever, not since the merger, not since 2000, not in the last ever to be down 14 points with less than 2 minutes and 55 seconds left in regulation and win without having to go to overtime. According to Next Gen Stats, their win probability model, the Titans win probability was as low as 0.4%. 0.4% when they trailed the Dolphins 27-13 with 3:08 left in regulation. And that win goes down as the second most statistically improbable comeback in the Next Gen Stats era. It sure felt like the Titans needed it. I mean, they needed a miracle last night. That was a miraculous win. And to kind of tie in some news from the weekend before the Titans ended up playing this game, and this news got a little bit overshadowed. It can't help, but I can't help at least, but thank Frank Wycheck, who tragically passed away, I believe, at age 52 this weekend, who played a pivotal role in the Music City Miracle. Sure felt poetic, sure felt meaningful that the Titans pull off such a miraculous end of game comeback and win on the game immediately following his passing. And that was really, really cool. We've got some old school categories for today's show to kind of structure our discussion. We're talking about some winners, then we're going to talk about some losers, then we're going to talk about some more winners, and then we're going to get to the news with JT. Before we do that, JT, what have the folks been saying in the comment section? Anything we need to address before we dive into the number one winner of the night, Will Levis?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about a couple of these here. First one here where Josh says, I don't know how Autry isn't a Titan next year. Surely something that is going to be a hot topic this offseason. I found it out. Autry now has in his career 11 blocked kicks.
11 double digits.
He has over double digits, over 10 with that one last night. So now he has 11 on his career, which is just pretty insane to me to have that many. But he's been a pivotal piece, definitely stepping up last night in lieu of Jeffrey Simmons not playing, and then also being a pivotal role on that special teams unit as well. Elliot also chimes in saying Vrabel masterclass, going for 2 and saving all 3 timeouts in the second half, which
it was
very unlike Vrabel for what we've seen this year. I mean, that we've had.
They're down 14. They score. Were you sitting there wondering to yourself in that moment, like, will they do the thing or will they not do the thing? Because I was like, no shot he does the thing. And then I look at the sidelines and he's going, like, holy. Oh, it
was night and day from what he has done this season. The precedent has been, we've talked about this many times, so you can go back to even the earliest days of week 1 this season being like, why hasn't Mike Vrabel gone for 2 this week? And that's really why I'm so shocked that certain people, maybe our favorite person in Nashville media today, is saying that Vrabel did not coach well. Like, Vrabel objectively changed like his ways and changed things that he did earlier in the season. He did them totally different, and he adjusted in this game because of where they were. But yeah, like you were saying, I totally thought they were going to go for 1, so much so that a lot of people were texting me saying, "Oh my God, I adjusted I adjusted the Miami line to -7, and now I'm gonna push." And I was like, "Well, at least you can like recalculate your parlay like that." Sure. And then they go out for 2, and I said, "Never mind. What are we doing?"
And can you imagine the discussion we were going to have today? By the way, if they had been on the very unlucky end of that 2-point gamut, it would. I'm going to very briefly explain why because I've had a surprising number of folks ask me today, like, why on the Manning cast that there were 3 quarterbacks on at the time: Kirk Cousins, Eli, and Peyton. They were all kind of talking about it like they weren't quite sure if they agree with it or understood it. Here's why you go for 2 down 14 there, or you hear often it's talked about as the like go for 2 down 8 gambit. Here's the reason why. When you're down 2 scores with not much time left, what you have to do in order to not lose the game is score 2 touchdowns, which is a difficult thing to do. But if you manage to do that and you kick the extra points like normal, your reward for doing that very difficult thing, scoring 2 touchdowns unanswered with very little time left, your reward is overtime. And functionally, overtime is a 50-50 proposition. There are circumstances that make it different in any given specific setup, but in general, sometimes overtime comes down to a simple flip of the coin. And so it's kind of a 50-50 proposition. Statistically, it is. If you're wanting to avoid that as your grand prize of doing a difficult thing, going for 2 essentially allows you to, again, we're talking about probabilities and statistics here. You are creating a universe in which you win the game and are rewarded for doing the difficult thing, scoring 2 touchdowns without much time left, unanswered. You are rewarded with winning in regulation. That opens up a timeline in which you can win regulation, because if you go for 2 and you make it, you get to do what the Titans did last night: score another touchdown, kick the extra point, and win by 1. If you go for 2 and miss, which going for 2 is also statistically about a 50-50 proposition, you then have roughly a 50-50 proposition of making it going for 2 the next time you score, which means as long as you make it once of the 2 touchdowns, you get that 2 points somewhere. That's 14 points in total, and you're rewarded with overtime. So that's 2 different scenarios, right? Because it's make the first time, miss the second time equals overtime, or miss the first time, make the second time equals overtime. And then the 4th scenario is you miss both times and you miss out on the game. But again, that is a really low percentage chance, and you are creating a universe for yourself like the Titans ended up working out last night, in which you are rewarded for doing that difficult thing by winning the game outright and not having to go to overtime. That's the long and short of it. That's the skinny on it. If you want more information on the actual math, that is available online. Just Google down 8, go for 2, or down 14, go for 2. And there's plenty of articles on it. So there's that. Kenneth asks in the comments, and this is a great transition into our discussion on specific folks in this game. He says, are we finally ready to switch from a Derrick Henry-led offense to a Will Levis-led offense? And I think the answer is yes. I think that this was a really important game. This is a game that I think is likely to be one that we look back on in the next couple months, years, JT, as an inflection point of some sort in Will Levis's career, an inflection point in the history of the Tennessee Titans. So let's talk about Levis and what he did last night. He made some mistakes, especially early. This was not a perfect game for him. It was a very, very good game for him, and he did some great things that we're going to discuss. But I want to be as fair and balanced today as possible, and we need to start by talking about the mistakes that he made, especially early on in this game. So we can start from the top. That pick six on the his second possession of the game at the goal line is about as ugly as it gets, right? That's one that he's staring down the guy that if the lineman wasn't exactly, he either wasn't rushing or wasn't rushing effectively. I need to go back and watch some more of the tape. I watched the tape for the first time. I don't know if it's out yet, but I haven't got a chance to look at it. That he was staring him down. Where he was throwing to was Spears leaking out, who, like, even if that defender hadn't been there, Spears wasn't going to catch that ball. It was weird. It was a weird decision. It was a bad decision, and it was compounded by Levis in the end zone trying to lay a shoulder on the guy already like 5 feet into the end zone. This is a lineman or defensive lineman who's like just cracks your shoulder. That's a dumb thing. Don't do that. There was a couple other instances where Will Levis didn't protect himself very well in this game, and we'll discuss that in the losers portion of today's topics. But that wasn't great. But he came right back swinging, and that's what's most important here, JT. He came back. The very next throw of the game that he made, once they got the ball back, was that gorgeous anticipation. Let me start that over. He came right back swinging with a pass that was that beautiful anticipation pass across the middle into a very tight window to Chig, who caught it, by the way. Ups for Chig. We're going to talk about him as a winner today because he absolutely was a winner in this game. And Sneaky has put together 3 or 4 really nice games in a row. A redemption arc for our favorite tight end on this show. But then the final 4-ish minutes of the game, that's where Will Levis really shined. That's what we need to talk about. In the final 4:34 of regulation of this game, Will Levis put up the following stats. He went 9 for 11 for 152 yards, led 2 touchdown drives, included one that he threw, and then he threw and completed a 2-point conversion. Let the man cook. That'll work. That'll do. We can work with that. Here's my ultimate takeaway from this game. And I saw a couple of different people say this in different ways. For the person who I saw put it the best, and this is kind of a reflection of a take I saw from him, but it's a popular and true one. Our buddy Mike Herndon, friend of the show, he said something along these lines as well as others. Will Levis has already shown us multiple examples in his 7-8 games that he started this year for the Titans. He's shown us multiple examples already of every single tool you can possibly ask for in a quarterback. We have seen not just flashes, but multiple flashes. Like you hear somebody say once is an instance, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. We're in the pattern territory for a lot of these things. But if you just go down any scout's checklist for traits, for tools you want to see a quarterback possess, the things you want to see him have in his bag. Okay, accuracy, check. Velocity, check. Touch, check. Arm angles, yep. Escapability, there. Playmaking ability, there. Leadership, absolutely. Poise, yep. Toughness, yes. Strength, absolutely. Quickness, yes. Size, big fella. It is purely, at this point, a matter of refining and polishing those traits. They're all there. The Titans went mining for diamonds, right? They went looking for their gem. And I am ready to officially say that they have found a big one. Now they just have to clean it and polish it and wipe that mud off of it, take it back to the shop, and they've got to get a pretty cut on it. They've got to refine that thing. This is a diamond, but it is in the rough. It has to be refined, and that's the next step for them. And that's exciting and a fun thing that we're going to get to watch this Titans team try to do. So far, so good. Robert Griffin III on Twitter, you pulled this, JT, an interesting stat. Will Levis, he calls him an incredible Hulk coming back from down 27-13, who then started creating outside the pocket with underhand pitches and throwing darts downfield to D-Hop and Westbrook Akine. Here's the stat, right? Only Brock Purdy, CJ Stroud, and Dak Prescott, 3 guys that have had pretty good year, I'd say. They are the only 3 quarterbacks in the league who have more explosive plays this season than Will Levis since he became the starter. So since week 7 or 8 or whenever it was. He has thrown in his here it is. I have it written down. 7 games. He started now for the Tennessee Titans. He's thrown 1,593 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions in those 7 games, which projects to a season total of just shy of 3,900 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions as a rookie in a full season. That is having one heck of a rookie year if he were to have done that throughout the season, especially considering his wide receiver situation and his offensive line situation. That'll do. We can work with that. The offensive line, one more thought on Levis before we talk about what you had to say from this game, JT, and what the folks in the comments have to say. The offensive line in this game, they weren't necessarily the reason Levis played well. In fact, you could say he played well despite them. They gave up pressure a ton per PFF charting in that game. Levis saw pressures on 46.3% of his dropbacks, nearly half of them. But he managed to avoid the sacks and averaged a ridiculous 10.5 yards per attempt when pressured, which is insanely good. For frame of reference for folks that may not know, a 50% pressure rate, which is roughly what the Titans allowed here, that's generally considered completely untenable. Can't work with it. The engine won't start. It's a non-starter in a game. It's the kind of number that post-game analysts rightly point to and say, you can't make a fair evaluation of the passer under these circumstances. I mean, it's untenable. You can't do it. And yet it didn't matter for Levis in that game last night. He threw for 327 yards. He was his best in the game when they needed him to be the best at the end of the game. A brilliant performance. Brilliant. JT, what do you have to say about this? What do the folks in the comments have to say about this performance from Will Levis?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, this game checked the box and more so of what I wanted to see from Will Levis this week, to an extent even that I didn't think possible, which was, okay, because I think we both assumed that one way or another, this Titans team was going to have to throw the ball a lot in this game.
Sure.
This one way or the other, this Miami Dolphins team was going to get up big on you, and it happened. It wasn't pretty, but they eventually did get up on this Titans team late in the fourth quarter. Okay, let's see Will Levis stick with it, and Tim Kelly trust Will Levis to keep throwing the ball downfield and just let him sling it. And that's exactly what we saw from him last night. And so in these situations, like, this is what I wanted to see from Will Levis, him be put in these situations down by a lot of points and just be able to just go out there and do what he does best with his big arm and throw the ball downfield. And I have to give hats off to DeAndre Hopkins for having an incredible performance. But even so, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, like I jokingly put out a tweet last night that says, on the one where NWI almost makes that catch in the end zone there, I tweeted out saying, so close for the wide receiver 2 of the Titans, NWI. And that was trying to say jokingly, but it really happened last night.
It's also just true.
That Nick Westbrook-Ikhine was very good last night. Trevor in the comments here also pointing out that Tyjae Spears was coming alive in the passing game and had a huge night last night. Will Levis being able to rely on Tyjae Spears in the passing game within that 2-minute drill, I thought that was also just brilliant by him. And yeah, there was a lot of things that I liked about this game from Will Levis and from Tim Kelly, especially in that 2-minute drill. Honestly, very night and day when you consider that the Titans in the first half during the 2-minute drill run 3 rushes up the middle and then punt the ball away. And then somehow come back within the 2 minutes left in the game and have just a totally different offense. I think that was one of the most head-scratching moments for me and why this game was so jarring. But in the end, like, Will Levis, he's got it, man.
Yeah, I mean, we can use that as an opportunity to transition to the other 2 guys I want to discuss real quick. Tyjae Spears, as mentioned, and DeAndre Hopkins, the other 2 guys that really made the engine of this offense work in this game. Before we discuss those guys, reminder, if you're watching with us live, thank you. Subscribe to the Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page if you are there, and join us in the comment section here on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page to be a part of today's conversation. We also appreciate our wonderful and amazing sponsors, BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse, where you can come and hang out with us each and every Thursday night live before Thursday Night Football, doing our live show, the Hot Read Podcast, talking Titans ahead of Sunday's action. All right. I was vamping there for a moment to pull up the stats from this game for the Tennessee Titans and the two guys in question here. And why is this being difficult to find? Hello. Oh, that's because it's the wrong game. Do me a favor here, JT. While I'm talking about these two guys, pull up their stats for me because I'm having trouble multitasking here. I guess let's start with Tyjae Spears, who this was, to me, really his coming out game. Over 100 yards of total offense, was their second receiver only to DeAndre Hopkins. The Titans' run game kind of non-existent in this game, which I find interesting, and we'll discuss in a minute. He was a sizable portion of that as well, but they were using him. Gadget is a step too far, but they were using him in a way that is they used him as a modern running back. They used him as a receiving back who can kind of do it all: run between the tackles, run outside the tackles, get to the edge, catch screens, run routes, and catch the ball downfield. You saw a little bit of all of that from him. And that's something that is really not just important for the Titans to win that game, but really the kind of thing that has to excite you about the future of this offense led by Will Levis and by Tyjae Spears. They make a really nice duo. And Spears has the juice, man. I mean, we've been talking about it all literally since February of this year, but long before he was ever a Titan. He's got the juice, and he's showing it each and every week more and more. And I'm really glad they're continuing to feature and utilize him more and more in this offense. I'm not saying that they should. A lot of discussion is going to turn to, well, at this point, should it be all Spears and no Henry? I think both are well utilized in this offense when used properly. I think the best way at this point in both of their careers is to go as close to what we saw really from Dallas, is who comes to mind for me last year when they still had Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard, using them in that capacity where it's kind of 50-50. Any given game, it's a little bit more of one, a little bit less than the other. And then one is used as your between the 20s back, and one of them is used as your red zone back. And that's how they did it last night with this tandem. You had Tyjae getting over 100 total yards of all-purpose offense, and you had Derrick Henry scoring 2 touchdowns, punching it in at the goal line. That's the appropriate usage to me. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that perfect balance that I think Tim Kelly has been very much refining the past couple of weeks. I think that's fair to say that we've seen the days of people outraged that the snap split between these two backs early in the season has kind of died down, because I think Tim Kelly, this has always been a work in progress for him, and it's all about finding that perfect balance. I think we're starting to see that perfect balance here. Tyjae Spears last night, 7 carries for 29 yards, 4.1 yards per carry. And then, like you said, where he is so good in that short passing game, 6 receptions for 89 yards on 8 targets. He was averaging 14.8 yards per catch, and then a long of 30 yards. Like, that is where you want to use him, because having him out there as that change of pace, and I think you bring up a great point there, where like kind of Cowboys-esque of last year, where Derrick Henry is that red zone back to Tyjae Spears' ability to run the ball, but also be a threat in the receiving game, is kind of what I think Tim Kelly in this offense really want going forward.
It is. And let's transition to the other guy on offense we want to talk about in DeAndre Hopkins. What were his official numbers last night? I know he had north of 100 receiving yards.
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins last night, 7 receptions on 12 targets for 124 yards and a touchdown, putting up once again another good game, which it seems to happen. We talk about that this is the third time that Jalen Ramsey and DeAndre Hopkins kind of were facing off on both of their third different team. They're playing for 3 different teams 3 times now. DeAndre Hopkins just somehow, some way, even though Jalen Ramsey has always been very, very good, he still finds a way to just absolutely slice and dice the secondary of Jalen Ramsey and company.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those guys that even at his age, he's going to get his. It's as simple as that. You saw multiple times last night where he was double and triple covered, especially on third down. And I'm watching this game with my dad and my brother, and they're exasperated as I am, watching just how much attention is being paid to him on those key downs. And I'm sitting there saying, of course, I mean, why would you not? Again, he's still kind of their only receiver. He's their third down sticks mover. Why would you not, if you were a defense playing the Titans, dedicate everything to covering him on third down? To the Dolphins' credit, they did, and it didn't really matter. He's just still that good. It's crazy how much juice he still has. He once again demonstrated my favorite rule of the NFL, which is to hashtag always commit OPI. He did and got that big X play down the sideline on that right-hand side, put the Titans into the red zone, pissed a lot of people on the internet off. And it's like, it's not cheating if they don't call it. It's not cheating if they don't call it. Always commit OPI. It's the best play in sports. It works. It works. If you're good at it, it's a skill. And he's frankly one of the best to ever do it. And so that was really fantastic. Anything from the comment section we need to address before we dive into some negatives, before diving back into some positives?
Yeah, we got a couple here. One from Joseph saying one thing we still need to work on is how to execute a screen pass. God help us.
I'm doing that.
I don't want to see another one for the rest of the season.
That's a step too far, man. Like when they execute them well, the screen pass is frankly one of the better plays the Titans have. Like the jailbreak screens, that's been a staple of this Titans offense for a little bit, and it's nice. But last night they were impressively bad at properly and safely executing those screen passes. So I'm with you that they need to get that cleaned up a little bit.
And then Alex Smith giving his opinion on Will Levis, saying that he is getting shades of Josh Allen in his early years. He has the ability to make mistakes, but also take over a game. Haven't seen that from a Titans quarterback in years.
Long time. And Josh Allen's been the, not lazy, but very popular comp for a long time with Levis, which is fair. The other guy that I think is not brought up a ton, and last night's game in particular really reminded me of him. And folks are gonna be like, oh gosh, don't make that comparison. But think back to his first couple seasons in the league with the Eagles. He's like Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz teammates didn't actively hate him, like he's affable Carson Wentz. So that's good. But like Carson Wentz, MVP season Carson Wentz before the injury, young Carson Wentz who was slicing and dicing and single-handedly carrying offenses, like that's kind of what Will Levis feels like to me. He's the size of a linebacker out there. He's crazy, and we can talk about that a little bit in the loser section here. He's going to get himself hurt if he keeps doing this stuff. And he had the helicopter play 2 weeks ago. He had a couple plays last night where he lowers the shoulder against a defensive lineman in the end zone, and then has a highlight tape run and hit of Jalen Ramsey where he literally folds him in half. It looked like one of those, TikTok chiropractic videos where they get the deepest break, the deepest crunch. And it's like just the most satisfying thing ever. I'm guessing every vertebrae that Jalen Ramsey has got a good old pop on that one.
Or like a, have you ever played the Mortal Kombat games where like you do the finisher and then it just like shows the X-ray of like someone's back breaking, almost like that as well.
In half, like Batman over Bane's knee. 100%.
I mean, to be fair, one of the comps coming out was that this kid may have too much muscle. Well,
too veiny, too vascular.
It kind of helps him out here, don't you think?
It does not hurt. There was some really funny takes when he was playing like a madman like that in that game on the internet. I think it was Ben Solak who said, I have no idea if Will Levis is going to be any good, but I do love the theory on paper of a Tonka truck playing quarterback. That's pretty cool. I find that entertaining. I don't know if it's Trevor Sikkema, I think is who said this. I should have written these down. He said that he thought it was funny how the NFL is actively trying to regulate away the injury risk of quarterbacks. Meanwhile, Will Levis is out here playing NFL quarterback like he's trying to honor 70s fullbacks. Like that's the kind of thing we saw from him last night. So that wasn't great. Will Levis Mike Vrabel at the press conference today that I attended was joking about how Will Levis needs to protect himself better. And he said he knows better. And in the past, recently we've been showing him clips of quarterbacks sliding, trying to get him to do that. And clearly that's not working. So he jokingly said, I guess we're going to have to show him, clips of quarterbacks getting their ass handed to them, just getting killed when they don't slide. And maybe that will change his mind a little bit. But he is really Josh Allen in that way. He's kind of a golden retriever quarterback. He's just going to do the thing. And you'll admire that competitive edge. In a lot of ways, it's an advantage, but you gotta find a way to rein that in a little bit. Elliot in the comments saying, let Levis play the man's game. Yeah, it's fair. You can play that game as long as you can play it, but you've got to be careful about it. And there are times when he lowers the shoulder against Jalen Ramsey, I don't really have yes, should he probably slide there situationally? Sure, whatever. But I really don't mind a big boy quarterback laying the wood on a DB. Pick and choose your spots. A DB, sure, drop a shoulder. I get it's risky, but maybe I'm old school a little bit in that capacity. Does that bother you that much, JT? What bothers me is when you're lowing a shoulder in the end zone after a pick six on a defensive lineman when he's running at you and you're standing still. Those were two perfect examples of do this, don't do that thing.
And on that play, I got Vietnam flashbacks to Andy Dalton's Cincinnati MVP season where he throws that interception and then goes for the tackle and then totally just derails the rest of his season. He's out for the rest of the season because he's trying to make a play on that interception. I think it was back in 2014, 2015. That is just one, like you said, Will Levis needs to not right. He threw the interception. Get it. You want to do everything, lay your life on the line for your team. Maybe just not in that instance.
Sure. And Jake in the comments saying that Big Ben is the comp. Yeah, I mean, there's a lineage here. Big Ben was the comp for Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the comp for Will Levis. They're the same archetype of player. Absolutely. Slight differences, but generalizations of all three are pretty similar. Some other losers in this game. Technically, the Tank. So I'm going to get back on my soapbox for a minute, JT, because I have some strong thoughts on this. The Tank took a hit last night. The Titans win that game, and so they fall to the 9th projected draft pick as of right this minute. If they had lost, they would have moved up to about 5th. I believe they entered the game at 6th. They fall back to 9th currently. But this young core found a way to win, and they looked impressive in doing so. And that is arguably more valuable, in my opinion. Here's the take, and folks are wondering, I had some folks on the internet confused about my stance on this and what I'm preaching. Am I floundering? No, I'm reporting the stats on where they are in the Tank, and it truly is a win-win situation for this Titans team. Every game is a win-win situation. Either they lose and they improve their draft stock, or they win and they find a way to win with their guys. But the reason why I'm pushing back my ultimate foot in the sand here is anti-taking for this team is this. Winning in the NFL is hard, man. It's really hard. Winning in the NFL is also a skill. Winning in the NFL is good. Those are all things that are true. Another thing that's true, the draft is a lottery. Ultimately, you're playing the numbers. It's a crapshoot at the end of the day. And this team, no matter what happens the rest of the year, they're going to be drafting plenty high. You can rest your pretty little head. They're not going to have the 23rd pick in this draft. They're going to have a perfectly high draft pick in a draft chock full of really talented players that I can't wait to talk about in the spring. Wake me then. But tonight was very good for the Titans, who have their young core in Will Levis and Tyjae Spears. And that is why I don't buy into this idea that tanking is for this team. They don't meet the criteria for tanking, in my opinion. They should go forth and prosper with who they have. And who they have is the reason why they shouldn't be tanking. Tanking is for two different types of teams, JT. Tanking is for teams that, one, don't have the young quarterback. The quarterback that they have, he's not the guy. They desperately need a quarterback high in the draft. You should be chasing after that tank. You should be chasing after that draft pick. The other thing that tanking is for teams that have good quarterbacks, but they are old and expensive. They are veterans and they cost you a lot of money. And the rest of your team is so devoid of talent that you just can't compete. And you've got to restock and get some real talent around that quarterback. Those are the two types of teams that tanking is for. Tanking is not really for teams that have found their guy. He is young and he is free. functionally to the team. That's where the Titans are with Will Levis. Like, he's their guy. They have their guy. When you're that team, tanking is nice if you need to add pieces around the guy like this Titans team does. But ultimately, you don't really fit the bill. You should start trying to figure out how to win with the guy now, because again, tanking is good, or winning is good, winning is hard, winning is valuable. It's a skill. It's something that you got to learn to do. And having some experience in the winning category going into next year, if you didn't find ways to win with Will Levis this season and went into next year having not really maintained or created any momentum in that category going into that season, how can you possibly consider yourselves anything more than a team in a transitionary year? Like, if you want to be a contender quickly, and when you find a very good young quarterback like this, and you have a bunch of money to spend in the offseason, you can become that very quickly. I think you really need to have some momentum rolling at the end of this season to carry over into that next year. And so that's why I think this is really important, and why I think that tanking, I'm not anti-tanking. I am anti-tanking when you already have your young quarterback, and the Titans have the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that one, especially considering, like you were saying, when you get down to it, the draft, it is a crapshoot. But in this case, and this is very early, but in this case, it is a lottery that has better odds than you would think. Like, this draft class, honestly, picks 1 to 22 could be blue chip prospects this year. Like, there's no shortage. It's night and day from last season in last year's draft class.
This is not Black Friday 2006 where you're lined up and there are 4 televisions on sale inside and there are 70 people fighting for them. Like, there's a lot of good players in the, like you said, it's early. We're probably going to change our minds 30 times before the draft comes, and we'll dive into all of that in the spring. But it's pretty clear. I feel comfortable, as you seem to feel comfortable already, in saying, whether the Titans picking at 9 or 12 or 15, that they're going to get a good player. I don't think that's a huge issue. And so I think it's a massive loser mentality to be distraught over that game for having hurt the tank. Who cares, man? Who cares? And I'm here to tell you, by the way, all the teams in this range, and we're going to talk about this in the news, all the teams in this range that should have been tanking, they pretty much all won. So it's kind of no harm, no foul in that capacity. And so that was technically a bad thing, but in my opinion, it was a good thing. A couple more bad things, and then we need to hurry things up here. Long show, lots to talk about, folks. I don't know what to tell you. Discipline, not good. Not good. This Titans team continues to have pre-snap penalties. Trevor in the comments here predicting what we're going to talk about. He says he wants to see the offense get plays off faster and clean up pre-snap penalties. Absolutely, Trevor. It's bad. And I get you're on the road. You got the music. You got the crowd. You got, you're having a silent snap count. All these things. It's an issue. And I asked Mike Vrabel today, and it's our only clip from the press conference we pulled because I found it to be the most interesting. I asked Mike Vrabel, the pre-snap penalties are an issue at this point. Like, it's a repeating theme in these games for your team. And we've got repeat offenders at this point. For the guy that comes to mind immediately is Dylan Radins. Every single week, he's getting a false start, if not a couple. Last night was a couple. Here's what Mike Vrabel had to say in an interesting and bit exasperated response to me. You can tell, in my opinion, that he's kind of fed up with it.
With some repeat offenders at this point, what's the disconnect there? Like, what has to happen to clean that up?
I don't know. I don't jump off sides, so when you have an opportunity to ask the players, you could ask them where the disconnect is with the music, the crowd noise, the cadence that we use at practice. But I don't, I jumped off sides plenty when I was playing, so I don't know. I'm with you. It's like, it's frustrating to see whether they're locked in and and their assignment or a pass rush. And we went through the week where it was the third down escapade, and we just not to, it's just, I guess, just frustrating that those are mistakes that we can't make and overcome 2nd and 15 or 1st and 15.
And I love and appreciate when Mike gives me or any of us in the media a detailed answer like that, because you can kind of see the stages of his emotions in his response throughout that minute or so clip. At first, it is distant frustration. I'm not the one jumping off sides. I don't know the answer to that question. And then as he continues to talk himself through it, it becomes like he says, I'm with you. Like, it's frustrating. And I don't know what the issue is. I can't not jump off sides for them. And this is where we talk about our favorite person in the market, Jared Stillman, who you said, I didn't listen to this, but you said he was talking today about how Mike Vrabel coach. I'm guessing that's the kind of thing that he's pointing to. And folks that are anti-Vrabel today are pointing to and saying that he got an undisciplined team. It's the first easy mark of a bad coach. It's an interesting discussion for me because I get it in general. That's a talking point. But he's right in the sense that he can't not jump off sides for them. There is a breaking point in trying to assign blame somewhere where it goes from coaching to, okay, there's no amount of coaching that can prevent this. You've just got players that are either inferior or not good enough or not smart enough or a combination of the two to get done what you need to get done. And that's kind of where I get the impression this Titans team is, because another one of the things that I wrote down here for losers in this game was the idea that the maxim bad teams make bad plays. Dysfunctional teams do dysfunctional things, right? The Titans last night, despite winning the game, it was an instance where they did implode for a minute. Like they did that. It was really bad, and they were handing the game away for quite a while. You want to make sure you lose to a team on the road, a team that's already much better than you. A good idea in general. And again, the Titans were the outlier last night, the exception that proves the rule. But a great idea in general on how to lose is giving away 2 turnovers in your own red zone at the end of the fourth quarter when it's a tight game. Like, that's a great way to lose. And they did that, and they tried that. You had other instances of lack of discipline. Eric Guerra trying to field that punt when he should have been nowhere near it. That was the first of the 2 turnovers. Woof, man. Like, unforgivable mistake by the UDFA Guerra, who folks are clowning today because he got a PFF grade on defense that was the highest on the team. Like, y'all, he had a good game on defense. It was on special teams where he made a horrendous, unforgivable mistake that you saw Vrabel on the sidelines chewing him out on the broadcast. And it's like, oh, I'd kill to know what he's saying right now. Novice lip readers around the world could tell that one of the things he said as Guerra was trying to explain why he did what he did, Vrabel responded with, I don't give an F. Like, was that what I don't effing care? Which along is fair. None of us effing care what the excuse was there. There is no excuse. You don't do it. Jake Robertson helping us out with the stats and research in the comment section here. He says Tennessee as the 3rd most penalized team in the NFL, tied with the Jags. And that is not the NFL out to get it for the Titans. That is an undisciplined team, my friend. That is absolutely the case. And so you've got issues like that. You've got the pitch play to Derrick Henry by Will Levis. That is not, I can't wait to ask them about that tomorrow to see, like, what was that? What happened there? Clearly on the wrong page, and bad pitch. Henry absolutely could have done a better job covering that ball up and protecting it, but he didn't. So there was that. And then the last thing under losers that I had written down was second-year receivers. It's going to go under talked about because they didn't really do anything, but you had Treylon Burks, who is struggling to get going on what was a huge cardio night. I think it was 47, 48 total snaps taken in this game. He had more snaps than DeAndre Hopkins in this game, and yet he had 3 targets, 1 catch, and 1 yard on the night. They're just, I don't know what to tell you, man. People say that they need to cut him, they need to give up. No, relax. They're not cutting him. They're not giving up on him. But it is fair as a fan at this point. Here's where it is fair to be upset and to be done. You can be done expecting anything from him. It needs to be I'll believe it when I see it situation. Totally fair to, like, keep letting him go out there. Keep letting them try to get it together and pull through. And again, on paper, can you realize what you have on paper in reality? Maybe there's a breakthrough. It's not impossible to see a late career breakthrough for a guy like that. But at this point, as a fan and your expectations, it's totally fair to say I'm not expecting anything from this guy right now. And then Phillips, who I was very excited, Kyle Phillips was active in this game. He was actively inactive because he didn't do anything. I don't know how many snaps he had. I forgot to check that number, but he played some and he didn't get any targets and he didn't have any receptions. So that's not great. Jake, along the lines of receiver in the comments, JT, I'm sure you've got something to say on that. He says, asks rather, any word on Kearis Jackson's return? Nothing specific. I doubt he's back this year. If he is, it will be later and in limited capacity. His injury was pretty significant next year for Kearis Jackson. Yeah, I mean, what is there to say on these two guys who?
So this is a very interesting take, I think, for me. I think there is something to be said, and actually, friend of the show, James Foster, put out took every route from past the line of scrimmage that Treylon Burks had last night, and so I will be watching that afterwards, and I think it might confirm that.
Oh, he has a compilation of all the video of it?
He has a compilation of all the video. There's something to be said that there are times that Treylon is open. It's
not being seen.
It's just not being seen because there is some times where Will Levis is absolutely tunnel visioned on a DeAndre Hopkins, and it maybe has to do with that. DeAndre Hopkins has been present all season with Will Levis since he's been back to make that great chemistry and make that rapport. Treylon Burks has not been around and has not had time to develop kind of a connection with Will Levis like during this time in the season. I can count a couple of times where last night, just going back in my memory, that I see Treylon Burks has about maybe 2 or 3 yards of even more separation than DeAndre Hopkins had. And Will Levis still forces the ball into DeAndre Hopkins' hand. Not saying that's a bad thing because DeAndre Hopkins obviously is a very talented receiver who can go get those balls. But yeah, it's a little frustrating for him. And I see the argument, but at the same time, it'll be interesting when I go watch the All-22 because I'm really interested to see more from Treylon Burks this week. He also had one which I think he could have had a chance of coming down with if it wasn't for a great PBU by the Dolphins secondary last night. But yeah, it is frustrating for him right now as like you said, just running simple cardio last night on most of these. But I think there were a couple of opportunities for him last night that Will Levis just passed on him.
You know, the famous basketball graphic, the meme where it's like 0 blocks, 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 steals, 0 assists, played. 28 minutes. Yeah, just cardio king for the evening. Yep. That was Treylon Burks. How about we get back to some winners and then we get to the news here, because there was more good than bad to talk about in this game, a game in which the Titans, again, they won. I'm having to remind you because it still doesn't feel quite right. How about the defense, who we've not given much love to at all today? It was truly shocking how the Titans, not just that they won this game, but how the Titans won this game last night, because we talked about it last week. The common sense path to victory for this team looked something like this. Well, you got to win the turnover battle in this one if the Titans want to stand a chance. They lost it 3-1. Well, you need to at least win the time of possession. Okay, you're going to need to possess the ball, keep the ball out of that Dolphins offense's hands. They had the ball for 5 less minutes in the game than the Dolphins did. Well, the Titans, you know their identity. You got a rookie quarterback, you got limited weapons, bad pass protection. You're going to need to dominate on the ground. You're going to need to win in the trenches, be a stout defense in the run game as the Titans have been, and they need to pound the rock with Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears. Got to win in the run game. Well, Titans only had 83 yards of total rushing, and they allowed 158 at a 5.1 yard per carry clip.
Titans only had 2.9 yards per carry.
That isn't to say that this was a fraudulent, lucky win. Like, let's be clear here. They won on the back of Will Levis's arm, Tyjae Spears, and DeAndre Hopkins making plays, and, as we're about to talk about, a fantastic red zone defense. A statistic that I think goes really under the radar because there's not much this Titans team is great at, let alone the best in the league at. The thing that they are the best in the league at, and it was on the screen last night if you were watching the broadcast, sneaky stat for you. They're the number 1 red zone defense in the league. Allowing, I think it was at the time of the beginning of last night's game, I don't know what it is now, 38 and change % of drives by opponents are allowed to turn into a touchdown. Best in the league. And last night, they lived up to that because, again, the Dolphins offense really only generated 6 points. They actually, on paper, offensively scored 20 points. The first 7 points came from the pick six. That's a defensive touchdown. Then they got 6 points on their own on actual full-length field drives, 2 field goals. And then the other 2 touchdowns were, maybe you'll have to pull up the specifics on this, JT. One was a pick six, or not a pick six, sorry, a muffed punt that turned into like a 1 or 2 play drive for 5 yards, and then the other one was
the punt at about the 5-yard line, and
right,
then
so
the
a
other
5-yard
one
drive for 1 or 2
Derrick
plays.
Henry fumble.
Right, and then the Derrick Henry fumble was a like 3-play, 12-yard drive, like two drives deep in the opponent red zone. So again, the only points they were allowed to generate by this Titans defense, which was prime bend don't break Titans defense, were those 2 field goals. 1 field goal attempt that they blocked, by the way.
It actually was on the first one 2 plays 7 yards and 2 plays 12 yards for a combined total
19
of
yards
4
for 2
plays,
touchdowns.
19 yards for 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, exactly. Not real drives, right? Those are gifted touchdowns. And so this was a wow, right? Like, wow, how this Titans red zone defense, they don't do a ton of things great, but the red zone defense is great. Don't ask me how. I don't know how they're so good at it, but it's what kept them in this game throughout the night. This defensive performance was what I was frankly expecting to see from this defense all year long, right? This was a complimentary defense performance. The secondary did a valiant, respectable job containing what is a track star team of professional athletes in Miami, keeping them in front of you, making some really, really nice one-on-one contested pass breakups and being in the way and forcing Tua to hold the ball for a long time. I mean, this is a crazy stat. This is unfathomable to me, but it's true. The only 3 defenses in the league who have managed to force Tua to hold the ball longer than 2.6 seconds on average, because this year he has thrived on getting the ball out so quickly. The Titans, the longest anybody has forced Tua to hold onto the ball this year on average, 2.72 seconds. The Chiefs, 2.64, and the Bills, 2.63 seconds. The Dolphins' passing offense averaged negative EPA against all 3 of those teams, and if I'm not mistaken, they lost to they lost to the Dolphins, didn't they? Or the Chiefs beat the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins lost all 3 of these teams. I could never have guessed that they would do that. It was a result of, again, the pass rush getting home, and the pass rush allowed to get home because the secondary was doing a bang-up job. Roger McCreary played a lights-out game. Sean Murphy-Bunting made a couple of notable mistakes, but battled back hard just through an injury, it looks like, when he and Tyreek Hill both went down on that hip drop tackle. He battled and made some really nice plays, especially in the red zone. You didn't hear Eric Garrett's name on defense. You also didn't hear Trey Avery's name on defense. They were both out there, so not hearing their names, that's good news. I was really, really impressed by them. And then the pass rush, like I said, they were showing out. I put this tweet up about, I think it was October 7th, first week of October. I tweeted out, I'm convinced every person surprised by or upset with Harold Landry's level of play through 5 games has never seen a professional athlete come back from an ACL injury. And I felt that was the case at the time. And I felt like people were being impatient and were being really foolish to write him off so early. Harold Landry, in the 8 games since that tweet, and AJ in the comments saying Harold Landry coming off an ACL injury has 8.5 sacks this season. Well, wait until I tell you after his first 5 games, getting back into the swing of things, what he's done. So after his first 5 games, he's played 8 games since that first 5-game stretch. In those 8 games, since that tweet, he has amassed 7.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 15 quarterback hits, and 28 pressures. Much of that is top 10, top 5 in the league in that time span. He's back. The Honorable Judge Landry is back in court. The court is in session. It's been really impressive watching. I mean, last night, he the cherry on top of all of these, 3-sack night, a big deal that he is back for this Titans offense. And they are, without Jeffrey Simmons in that game, he still is getting home.
Yeah, I'm with you there. My 2, or I guess I'll say 3 guys that stood out to me last night. Harold Landry, 1, was making impacts in lieu of the defensive injuries. Like you said, Roger McCreary had a really good game. He is back. He had that little dip in his performance, but Roger McCreary continuing to develop into a nice young secondary player for this team. And then I think the linebacker that was able to do anything against Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane last night, Azeez Al-Shaair. I think he had a pretty solid game, even though he wasn't exactly on the leaderboard or being talked about a lot, but he had 10 total tackles and 7 solo. So he was there being able to contain Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane before they were able to break off huge runs.
Yeah, it was a really, really nice defensively. Todd in the comments saying that Nico Autry balled out like always. Yep, it's crazy how much juice he has left at 32, 31 years old. It was a really phenomenal night for that defense, and it was a phenomenal night for the defense or for the Titans as a whole. I know we had a lot today. We're 75 minutes into this, and I've thrown a ton of information at you guys. I appreciate you being here and being part of the conversation. One last segment to get to before we dip out of here. We have quite a few things in the news to discuss. So without further ado, here is producer JT with the news.
Yeah, let's talk about, like you said, the Titans may have won the game, but lost them some positions in the tank race. I wouldn't put it that far. As teams,
if everybody loses, yes, everybody wins.
Yes, if teams with 4 or fewer wins coming into the weekend, they all went 5-1. The Patriots, Jets, Bears, Giants, and Titans all won this weekend. The Panthers lost once again, so that obviously pretty much, unless Bryce Young has a insane last couple of games, the one
unless Bryce Young turns into one of the other 3 top quarterbacks drafted besides him in this draft class. Yeah. Can you imagine being the Panthers right now, by the way? I know we talked about this earlier today. You trade pardon my language, but we're 80 minutes into the show. I feel like I can. You sold your whole ass to move up for Bryce Young. And then less than a full year later, not even a full year, less than a full season later, CJ Stroud, clearly him. Will Levis sure as hell looks like him. Anthony Richardson, before he got hurt, looked like him. You fired your first year head coach, and Bryce is struggling mightily with a terrible supporting cast.
Yeah, it's not looking good, and now they do not have their first round pick this season. So
hey, shout out the Bears. Locked down that first round pick. That is a no sweat for them. Good for them, man. Good for the Bears.
And then the Commanders and Cardinals also on bye, so they don't move. Actually, they move up because of everyone else winning.
Everybody moved away from them.
Exactly.
Tangentially, before you move on, the only thing I'll say about this is, by the way, why professional bettors clean up this time of year. These were all teams that nobody wanted to touch, and we were guilty of it on this show. Favorites have been doing so well. I think, JT, we got a little bit lulled into taking too many favorites. Down the stretch, we're probably going to be focusing on some more dogs, some ugly dogs like this, because all 5 of those teams that won this week, the Patriots, the Jets, the Bears, the Giants, the Titans, all of those teams, to most public bettors that I talk to, they are at this point in the year considered touch under no circumstances. In the spirit of the Christmas season, from the song The Grinch, I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5-foot pole. That's what most of these teams are at this point. And professional bettors say, I will take those. Thank you very much. Give me big, fat, inflated lines. NFL teams don't quit. These teams didn't quit. They all won. This is why they make big bucks.
Moving on now, let's talk about Derrick Henry and another milestone game for him, because it seems like every game is a milestone for him. But with his 2 rushing touchdowns on Monday Night Football this week, Derrick Henry now has 10 plus rushing touchdowns for a 6th consecutive season. He is the 6th player in NFL history with 10 or more touchdowns in 6 plus seasons. He joins.
Wait, hang on. Do you have a list for this?
I do have a list. He joins.
Can I go out on a limb here and say this is going to be another list of Derrick Henry and a bunch of Hall of Famers? Is that going to be the case?
It could be the case.
So who do we have here?
He joins LaDainian Tomlinson,
future Hall of Famer.
Emmitt Smith,
Hall of Famer.
Adrian Peterson,
future Hall of Famer.
Barry Sanders,
Hall of Famer.
Marcus Allen,
Hall of Famer, I think.
I'm not sure,
but I don't know.
And then Derrick Henry.
And then Derrick Henry. Hey, yeah. Okay. Thanks for Marcus for ruining our point. Sorry if you're a Hall of Famer, we don't know. But yeah, I mean, would you believe it? Another example of Derrick Henry plus a bunch of Hall of Famers. Crazy how that happens.
Yes, and then finally, just a little bit of a look ahead to this week upcoming against the Texans.
Marcus Allen is in the Hall of Fame, by the way. So sorry,
good.
Marcus.
Good for him.
We should have known. Sorry, should have known that, Marcus. Should have known that.
The Texans worked out a quarterback but didn't sign him, so that means they could feel pretty okay about CJ Stroud playing, or it also means that this quarterback they worked out wasn't any good. Either way, it most likely will be CJ Stroud or Davis Mills this weekend.
Do we know who they worked
Nissan.
out, or did they just say worked out?
Yeah,
a
so
quarterback?
they worked out quarterback Jack Cohn, who played at Wisconsin and Notre Dame.
Yeah,
and
Notre Dame legend. He played a game. He started a game for the Saints last year. Do you remember that? In prime time, we got Jack Cohn Saints in prime time, and it was
I don't believe you.
It was a top 3 unwatchable game of the year.
I don't.
He may not have started, but he played the majority of the game. Either he started or somebody got hurt quickly. But we got a Jack Cohn game, and it was a nightmare.
But yes, either way, he did not sign with the Texans today, so that means that it will be CJ Stroud or Davis Mills.
Yeah, it's a great transition into some best bet gauntlet results and early leans, because I do have a couple. I want to do a better job, JT. The best bet gauntlet we take very seriously here. We advise you every Thursday to follow our social media feeds, where we put some early leans out there and lock in some lines early in the week on Tuesday and Wednesday before the Thursday show. We make our final picks because there's closing line value, because we want to get the numbers at the best of the number before they move. So I want to do a better job on Tuesday's show of talking about those when we have them. And I've got a couple today that I put out there. I saw that you agreed with grabbing some of those while they're still grabbing them hot off the presses. Before we do that, some results from the week. We both went 3-2, so a 6-4 week for the show. We will take that each and every single week. Please and thank you. Give it to us all the time. 60% is making good money, very good money. And so it is yet another week on the year where we win. I went and looked, by the way. We have 9 weeks this season so far in which we won money. So we went 6-4 or better. And we have 5 weeks in which we lost money, going 5-5 or worse, which again, 5-5, you're losing just the VIG just a little bit. That's essentially 500. Of those losing weeks, we went 5-5 in 2 of those 5. So only 3 weeks out of 14 this season where we've been below 500. And again, 9 weeks where we've made money even despite the VIG. So fantastic year for the best bet gauntlet. Keep that train a-rolling, keep improving our numbers. With that, we've got some early leans on this one, and I want to briefly discuss what those are. 3 that I have. The first is Tennessee -2 at Houston, versus Houston in Nashville. First of all, very important statistic. They are playing in their throwback uniforms, in which it's physically impossible for them to lose in. So take that into account when you're betting. Number 2, and this is just a simple grab before Stroud is officially ruled out with a concussion. I think that he will be. I also think they're going to be without Tank Dell, without Nico Collins, without their third receiver in tight end. Help me out here. Dalton Schultz. If all 3 of those guys are out and CJ Stroud is out officially, there's no way that number stays below 3. It's going to be Titans -3, -3.5. If it's Davis Mills coming to Nashville next Sunday, that's going to be the case. If Stroud's cleared to play, I'm probably going to buy out at this position. So just keep that in mind. But you are
forgetting that it is Robert Woods' revenge homecoming game. So,
dude, that changes everything. I'm gonna factor that into my model and see what it spits out later, and I'll get back to you. But yeah, so taking Tennessee -2 versus Houston early before that moves. Also grabbing Buffalo -2.5 versus Dallas. Gotta grab this while it's still below the field goal. Buffalo is the better team in this matchup. You can shout at a wall. They are the better team in this matchup. They're also this is more important. Clearly both teams are very good. The important and objective differentiator here is they are the more desperate team in this matchup, much more desperate. They're going to be the rest of the year because they're playing for their playoff lives. And Dallas is due for a letdown spot. They've had a couple of really impressive big performances lately. They're due for a letdown. I'm personally smashing the Bills this week, and I think getting that under the field goal, whether you think it's a good move or not, take Buffalo. I think it's going to move to over the field goal. So grabbing that is good. And then this one's kind of gross. Minnesota +3.5 at Cincinnati at your Bungles. This one makes me queasy too. Like, I know why, but simply have to do it based on just our betting fundamentals and the spot here. It's a big buy low, sell high situation on a Minnesota team with a quarterback situation. They announced today that Josh Dobbs, the pastronaut turned astronaut, is getting sat down. You're getting Nicky Mullins is going to have a full week of practice to start, and they're coming off of a 3-0 win in air quotes because that everybody lost in that game, viewers and both teams and everybody involved. The Bengals, for their part, they're a team riding high on Jake Browning's success, which will inevitably fall back down to earth. Could get caught here. Maybe the Browning success, the match doesn't run out yet, but I'm kind of betting on that now. And I think that the pros, more importantly, they're going to be hammering this spot. I think Minnesota as a 3.5-point underdog is going to go under or to that field goal quickly. So getting the hook now is important. So those 3 early leans for the best bet gauntlet: Tennessee -2 versus Houston, Buffalo -2.5 versus Dallas, and Minnesota +3.5 at Cincy. Again, not guaranteed to be in our best bet gauntlet come Thursday, not guaranteed to be my bet or JT's bet. But they are sides that we agree are liable to move. And so get the best of the number now, maybe buy out later if you think it's not the best bet. All right, JT, anything else in the news for us today?
That's going to do it for today.
All right, that's going to do it for the news with producer JT. Thank you very much. That's going to do it with our show today. A long one, but it was well-deserved. Rarely in recent weeks have we had north of hour 15. We got about an hour half worth of show here today, but it was a great one. Appreciate each and every one of you that was with us today live. If you're listening post, maybe change things up and join us live next time. We're live each and every Sunday evening when the Titans play on Sundays. This is a weird week because they play on Monday. Sunday evenings, Tuesday afternoons, and Thursday afternoon, evening, 5:30 p.m., whatever you consider that. So come and check us out. AJ, waving goodbye in the comments. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody that tuned in with us. Again, check out BoomBozz, our wonderful and amazing sponsor. That's where you'll see us next, live at BoomBozz this Thursday night. Come hang out. It's going to be a good time. 5:30 for the show. 7:15 or whenever Thursday Night Football starts, 7:15, I think, for the game. We'll be there all night long, hanging out, watching the game, drinking, eating, having a good time. Make sure you're subscribing to us on social media at Hot Read Pod. That's the show account on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you're going to find the best content from the show, as well as updates as to when we're going live and what shows are happening when. And then subscribe on YouTube to Broadway Sports Media YouTube page. Check us out there as well. One last thing while we're asking for favors: subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen to this in podcast form, and leave a 5-star review. Haven't asked for that in a while. Would love your 5-star review input. It's very helpful to us. And thank you very much for listening to our show. Until Thursday, when JT and I will be back, probably talking a little bit more about this miraculous win and talking a whole lot more about the Texans coming to town for a little Titans Oilers throwback, rub it in your face revenge game situation. We got confirmation last night that potentially Mike Vrabel, according to what he said in the locker room to his players, might be wearing a little Bum Phillips Cowboys hat out there. I'm going to do as best I can to get people to pressure him into doing that. We'll see what happens. We'll talk about all of those things on Thursday. Until then, for producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. Have a fantastic couple of days, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.